So you've been analyzing, you've been looking at Carreras' latest results. What are the highlights?
So one major highlight from last year was that Jamaicans are smoking a lot more Kalila. Well,
Really?
for context, not just necessarily smoking, but they are using more of Carreras' products. So for 2024, Carreras recorded its highest ever revenue of $19.55 billion. And that was a 11% increase when you compare it against normalized 2024. Comparison to financial year in 2024. So I did this back to the numbers, but yeah, highest revenue of $19.55 billion. Net profit passed $6.2 billion. First time it's ever passed even $5 billion in terms of net profit. And when I went to the annual report, one thing that stood out to me was that for the last 4 years, they've been holding in terms of steady state volumes, in terms of volume sales in the Jamaican market for combustibles. So that's your cigarettes, your Matterhorn, your Craveney. But don't forget, in September 2023, Carreras would have introduced the Vuse to the Jamaican market. Now,
They introduced what?
Vuse, VUSE.
Oh, a product. That's the vape? That's the vape
Yes,
product?
correct. So, for those who don't know, Carreras is a subsidiary of British American Tobacco. That is on London Stock Exchange. So, BAT does research, and Carreras sells the products, right? So, they're distribution only. In September 2023, BAT said, hey, based on observations, it's time for us to introduce Vuse to the Jamaican market. And they said it's blown past their internal expectations. They're not segregated the numbers, but it takes a perfect picture of what's going on. Because Carreras mentioned, apart from the fact that cigarettes versus the combustibles, which means cigarette volumes being flat, they've increased prices. So when you compare it on year, volumes are relatively flat on the combustible side, but because of the increase in prices, you end up with a resulting situation whereby you see high revenue, but that's not necessarily because of higher volume sales. So the vaping side of the business is now catching on and delivering actual profitable returns to Carreras. And the market has been quite impressed by just Carreras' performance, because Carreras was trading at around $8 last August. It's trading at $16 today. That's the highest Carreras has ever traded at. So pretty bit of history again. Either September 2017 or September 2018, Carreras, before it started, was trading at about 110 Jamaican dollars, $11 post stock split. So it's blown past its peak price of $11 in effect, and it's trading at $16 now. And even for its first quarter, what you'd have realized is that Carreras, would have seen a 63% year-over-year increase in revenue to $4.4 billion, and net profit shot through the roof, $1.41 billion. However, there's some context. The reason why the previous period, March 2024, has such a low base was because Carreras changed their strategy in terms of inventory management. So instead of just having a lot of inventory on the market, they would have shifted that strategy to be a little bit more just in time, because apart from Vuse, not Vuse, apart from BAT, saying Carreras time to sell Vuse in the Jamaican market, we import cigarettes from Trinidad and Tobago from Carreras' sister company, West Indian Tobacco. So we used to manufacture cigarettes here in Jamaica by Spanish Town, started in 2005, import from Trinidad. So you can't get the picture, but basically they've said, hey, we're not going to feed the market with too much inventory. Let's manage it accordingly. And that's Q1 24, but there was such a lower base. If you compare it against the Q1 2023 period, which was relatively normalized, revenue was of about probably 11% or 12% or in that region, basically. So you kind of get normalization in a sense, but technically speaking, the fact that you're seeing steady state numbers in terms of combustion, which is cigarettes, and an increase in vape consumption, it kind of tells that people are stressed, and Carreras is benefiting from being the scene of
Yeah, that's
choice.
interesting. Because smoking is one of those things that increase when typically the economy is bad. When things are not going well, people are stressed, they turn to these sin companies.
Advice.
A vice, yeah, exactly. Smoking, drinking, that type of thing. I don't know what insights do you gain from this, economically speaking, David, that people are turning to smoking?
People are trying to deal with their stress, and it's have people around the place, and it's pretty rough. The economy is not collapsing as some persons are making it out to be. That's not the case. The economy is a lot slower. And when the economy is a lot slower, you find there's a little less spending in particular market segments. So instead of you having a particular volume of business in this period of the year, it's lower. You're thinking about paying your staff or paying your own bills. And even though, for example, the Bank of Jamaica has been reducing interest rates, persons are still paying relatively high finance costs, relatively speaking. And, people just looking at higher food prices and just tough situations in their own perspectives. If you're in tourism, you're stressed with lower arrivals at St. International Airport. So people are under pressure.
Yeah, but Carreras stock has been hot for a while now. Any insights as to why that is?
So someone always made this comment, and it's kind of good to listen to different perspectives. So when you tend to find, some more economic uncertainty in the environment, persons tend to do what you'd call run for the hills. Now, some persons think it means to go to Blue Mountain, but that's not the case in the stock market. So you might find a recalibration of investment portfolios going from what you'd call more riskier positions. In this case, you see in the junior market stock prices, some of them trade more IPO price, as them going down. If my price is going towards the more safe stocks in a sense, and in the case of Carreras, the dividend payments are going up, so which increases the dividend yield, relatively speaking, based on where you bought the stock. At the same time, the earnings are going up. Because I was surprised this Carreras go $10, $12, and I'm like, wow, it's still going up. And as you interpret the results and just look at the background and environment, you appreciate what's going on, because even Scotia Group, was trading at around $38 around December 2023, when just had $62, $65 back in January 2025. But it gives in the picture, like your Scotia, your Carreras, I can't remember which other stocks are in the market that are considered very safe.
Over $16 now, and you look at the 52-week high was $16.50, and the 52-week low is half that, $8.55.
Exactly.
So they've been on a roll year to date. Look at 1 year. Yep. Look at the 1 year coming from $8 and change all the way up to 16 in the past year.
People are going for safety, Kalila. That's just the reality. And I remember during COVID, when COVID had just hit in March 2020, I remember seeing Carreras got low at $6, and I'm like, I wish I was one of those persons, who had some tripod on standby, because the dividend payments you've been getting from then to now, you probably passed at least half your investment in total dividends over the last 5 years, because Carreras, before the price spike, had a dividend yield of about 10%, that's before tax. And with the increase in profitability of the business, the dividend payments are going up. So persons who had bought during COVID in March 2020, they're laughing to the bank, because stock prices effectively doubled in value, and also the cumulative dividend payments, are getting closer and closer to the amount paid for the stock. So there are certain stocks that take time to reflect that accumulated value from dividends, and that's where persons also talk about dividend yield, being artificial of the current market. But if the business continue growing aggressively and increasing their payments, it's all better for you. But it's an interesting dynamic. It's not easy to look at the group of Campari. They own Jerry and Nephew, because last year during Q1 24, there would have been the disruption to rum production based on prioritization needs between your aged rum versus your white rum. But when you come on to Jerry and Nephew, they're seeing pretty decent rum sales. They just opened a new museum in Kingston by the Jamaica Drive head office, and for some ventures, they're still seeing steady state, gaming numbers, for lotto and all of the associated games, sports betting. So persons are in this case trying to release stress by taking advice. At the same time, other persons are trying to relieve stress by making money. So you play your cash pot, you play your pick two, you do your just bet on football games. English Premier League just finished on Sunday. So it's an interesting way to look at things, that in hard economic times, relatively speaking, in your economic class or situation, that the sins become the kings of the hill.
Yeah, and just some final numbers here from My Money JA. So Carreras has trading at a PE of almost 11, or trailing 12-month EPS $1.45. And what most people like Carreras for is the dividends. So high dividend yield, among the highest on the JSE. 2024, that dividend yield was 6.37%. And so far in 2025, they're at, call it 5%. And we're not done the year yet. They've only had 2 quarters of dividend payments so far. So
and don't forget that Carreras, has 100% dividend payout ratio. I believe today actually was Carreras' record date. If you bought Carreras shares yesterday, you'd have qualified for, I believe, the 25% dividend that is being paid next month.
You are right. It's today, the 27th.
Yeah, track dividends across the market. So, but I'm just showing you that it's a pretty interesting reality, because from $1.45, Carreras probably going to pay $1.44 as dividends. Like, it's just one of those very rare stocks where the company pays its entire profitability to shareholders as dividends.
Interesting stuff. If you're not opposed to smoking morally, a company that you should consider for your portfolio. All right, thanks for the recap, David. Always appreciated.
You're welcome, Kalila.